The great snowstorm. Christmas was still here on the island of Sodor, and the other engines were taking passengers around the beautiful sights of Sodor as usual. But some engines hate snow because there had sometimes been avalanches and calls that needed to be arranged for help. One snowy day, Emily had just taken her passengers to the station where she met Ryan. Ryan was still not feeling happy at the moment. "Hello, Ryan," said Emily cheerfully. "You look a bit down." Yes, I am really, Emily," said Ryan. "I don't really like snow." "Snow is great," said Emily. It even makes my paintwork shine in the sun," she said, although it doesn't shine in the snowy storms, she added. "At least it doesn't melt you like a cake," added Thomas cheekily. Emily soon ignored Thomas's comments, but Ryan just chuckled, and then he said, "I'm looking for the fat controller because I heard Stepney's been stuck in the snow for the last couple of days." "I've heard as well," said Thomas, when they heard a voice. "Ah, there you two are." It was the fat controller. The fat controller had just walked while the three engines weren't looking. "Thomas, Ryan, you two are the engines I've been looking for. As you all know, Stepney has been stuck in an avalanche at Lord Michael's station, and you two are to look after his passengers. You two will take it in turns." "Yes, sir," said the two engines. Thomas puffed excitedly away, but Ryan, who was unhappy with snow, puffed away to get his coaches prepared for Stepney's passengers. One afternoon, Thomas still took Annie and Clara about to look after Stepney's passengers. But still, both he and Ryan took it in turns to look after Stepney's passengers before Stepney could be rescued out of the snow for a good chance. Later, two were in their nice warm sheds when the fat controller walked up. He had some important news. "I need you two to take some presents to the mountain village tonight," he said. "But be careful around the snowstorm." "Yes, sir," said the two engines, but Ryan wasn't so sure. He had had incidents with snow before, but he was worried that he wouldn't make it back home in time. Soon evening broke out, and it was still snowing as usual. Thomas arrived where Ryan was just taking on water, and then Stanley puffed in with the last mail van. He buffered it up to Ryan as Thomas and Ryan were coupled to their mail vans. "Be careful around the snow," said Ryan to Thomas. You better know also that we don't want to have what Stepney had a few days ago," he said. "Don't worry," said Thomas. "Why is it that you're worried about snow?" "I just don't like it," said Ryan warmly. "I wouldn't worry about this," said Stanley. "By the way," he said, "hope you two will have a wonderful evening." "We will," said Thomas and Ryan together, and with that they both puffed away into the night. Before Stanley was about to leave, the station master ran towards him. He had bad news. "You better warn Thomas and Ryan," he said urgently. "A snowstorm's coming." But then Stanley blew his whistle, but they didn't hear. "Damn it," he said. "They're going to get themselves into trouble in an avalanche soon enough," he said. With that, he puffed out of the station back to his warm shed. A few moments later, Stanley came back to the sheds looking very worried. The others all felt worried for him. "What's wrong, Stanley?" asked Billy. Stanley was worried, but shivered a little. "I'm worried about Thomas and Ryan," he said. "They were okay last time, but I feel like they're heading for trouble in the snow." "Don't worry," said Duck. "I'm sure they'll be all right. I'm sure they'll turn up after they've felt much safer from the snow. Yeah, said Emily, they'll turn up after. You wait. But Stanley wasn't too sure. He soon said his Merry Christmases to his friends, and then the four went to sleep in their sheds, feeling tucked up and nice and warm. Meanwhile, however, midnight had begun, and Thomas and Ryan were both enjoying their trip to the mountain village. They were all speaking to each other together as usual. Ryan was still trying to keep track on time for before he could have incidents with snow again like he did the last time. Thomas soon started cheering him up. They were chatting together when they heard a noise. "What's that?" said Thomas. "I don't know," said Ryan. They stopped. But then, when their drivers and firemen looked out, they heard a noise. It was getting closer and closer and closer. It was louder and louder. Then Thomas heard it before. "It's an avalanche!" shouted his driver. "Quick, Thomas, let's make a run for it." "Yes," said Ryan, "I don't want to be buried in the snow." The two went faster than the wheels could carry them, but luckily they made it through and down the bridge just in time. And now there was no way out. Luckily, Thomas and Ryan were safe. They were happy to be safe, but then they realised they were at Lord Michael's station. "If we're at Lord Michael's station," said Ryan, "where is the station?" Thomas was confused. "It's buried in the snow somewhere," he said. But then they heard a loud, "Help! I'm stuck! Somebody help me!" Thomas listened carefully. "Help! Could it be who I think it is?" asked Ryan. Then Thomas remembered. "It's Stepney," he said, and he was right. There was Stepney buried in the avalanche with Lord Michael's station. Poor Stepney's fire had gone out after the avalanche, and he was cold and lonely and sad. "Help me," he said. "Call for help." "Don't worry," said Ryan, "but I'm sorry, Stepney. Well, we can't help you right now. After we've done our jobs, we'll call for help in the morning. Just wait patiently," he said, and the two puffed away to complete their jobs and call for help. In the morning, both Thomas and Ryan's jobs were finally done, and some workmen came out of their cabs, and they were all digging Stepney out of the snow. And it wasn't too long until Stepney was free from the snow, and so was Lord Michael's station. Luckily, Stepney had finally had the right coal for his boiler. Stepney was nice and warm. His driver lit the fire, and he was able to move. "Thank you," he said. "Now I can go." Ryan immediately moved out of the way for Stepney to go past. Soon, Stepney stopped nearby. "I'll never forget what you two have done for me," he said. "The Fat Controller will be pleased with your performance." "Yes," said Ryan, "although we can't make it through the great snowstorm last night, we'll all have to wait." Stepney chuckled. Until after he had chuckled, both Thomas and Ryan chuckled. There was no way they could get out of the snowstorm after what happened last night. With that, instead of going out in the snow. They all had to stay until the avalanche they encountered was cleared off. But for now, both the 3 engines had a holly jolly Christmas.